everybody, and welcome to Digital Hammurabi. For those of you who are new, I am Megan Lewis. I am your host today, and I am joined by the wonderful Lexie Henning from the Ozymandias Project, which I am very excited to hear more about, and you should be too, because it's classics and it's podcasting, and really, that's like two of my favorite things. So, Lexie, hello, welcome. It's so nice to have you.
Oh, thanks for having me on. Thank you.
Could you give us like a super brief introduction and maybe a bit of your background?
Yeah, I can be really brief. That's easy. I've got this one tailored down. So essentially, I just graduated from the University of Missouri in 2018, so not very long ago. I majored in classics, classical studies, just to be very clear, because I do not have the languages. But I've always been just like the history nerd who wanted to do things with ancient Greece. And when I knew I wasn't going to go to grad school, I was like trying to find a way to keep the ancient world alive in my life. And also, how do I make an avenue for myself to be able to talk to other people about it without just sort of being the asshole who was like, hey, I have the BA. Do you want to come talk to me even though you're like in grad school or you're doing whatever? Like, why would they talk to me?
Mm-hmm.
And so after starting my professional career in politics, I was definitely like, yeah, I need ancient world stuff, especially since so much of modern politics is like, I can see where like things came through the ages. So really in August of last year, 2020, I had a friend who just said, hey, I think you should start a podcast about the ancient world. I think there's a lot of people who would really want to like listen to you and listen to more people in the field. And I just said, okay, I'll give it a shot. Why not? Let's try this. So I started it up and still going. So it means some people must like it.
Well, congratulations. Speaking from experience, podcasting is not a light commitment. So thank you for taking the plunge and for going for it, because I think everyone is richer for having access to such a nice wide variety of podcast materials. What do you try and focus on when you do your podcasts?
So I like to say that I have a very loose format because obviously I leave it open because the wide variety of guests that I'm trying to attract. So it comes down to, I would say, like three core topics, which is really like the funding issue, because for most of the ancient studies, funding is just like the worst, especially in this country. I don't know how it's doing in other countries. I suspect just because they're all humanities that they do struggle. But here there's just this lack of emphasis. So no one cares. And I look in the news and see, oh, this classics department is getting completely disbanded. And I'm like, why? Just give it money. So funding is usually a big topic. And then I let kind of the guests dictate how much they want to get into funding. Sometimes I'll try to drive the conversation there. It really depends. And then I would say the second one is the applicability argument. So there's a lot of people who say, okay, I like ancient history, I like classics, I like Egyptology, but I would never get a degree because I can't apply that to anything in modern life. And everyone tells me, I'll be poor and never get a job. So it's then trying to have this conversation with scholars and other people who are, either classics adjacent or just in a completely different industry, but it's tying together what other industries that are completely not in academia can you go into that would really benefit from a background in classics. And that naturally led me to acting, theater, entertainment. So just seeing, I'm a gamer, so I play the Assassin's Creed series. I'm like, that's perfect. That's perfect for someone like me who's an academic, but it's also for other people who just like the ancient world. So, that kind of opened it up. So then I was like, okay, well, then I can talk to, game writers, film writers, actors, anybody who's really involved in that industry, because, hey, if you majored in theater, you might want to do some classical material. So that was a really natural sort of segue there. And then the last thing is really like, where do we see the ancient world in pop culture? And a lot of people were like, are you sure you just want to do another pop culture segment? Like, you can choose something unique that's different. But I think it's important because I think that there's like the main pop culture section where people just think Brad Pitt Troy or Elizabeth Taylor Cleopatra. And then there's like the segment of pop culture that people don't like they don't get it unless they've taken a class. So then when I say something like, have you ever heard the expression like that's my Achilles heel, or oh, that scenario is ridiculous, that's a chimera right there.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, it's these popular expressions that have migrated into our language every day that qualifies technically as pop culture. And it's something as simple as like looking at ambulances and being like, fun fact.
Why is there a snake on that?
Like they use the caduceus, which is Hermes' rod, and I'm like, it should be the rod of Asclepius, who's the god of medicine. So I'm like, that's wrong, but so it's just kind of like being able to pop out those funny things and being like, oh, because they used the wrong one, and that's Hermes' staff on the ambulance, he would lead the souls to the underworld. So I'm like, that's kind of the wrong message, right? So we don't want people in the ambulance to be like, we're shepherding them into the afterworld. They're going to die. I'm like, let's put some medicine on there. So
that's really cool. And do you get, so when I was an undergrad, I did like ancient history broadly, and one of the modules I took was like classical reception in popular culture. And I kind of went in as someone who got really irate when I saw those kinds of mistakes, and like I couldn't watch films based on the ancient world because I'd be like, that's wrong, and that's one, and that's wrong, and I hate it all, and why did they not do any research? And it was a really interesting transition for me, because I came out of that class actually with a much more nuanced view and more able and willing to look at why things get misused and the interesting ways in which that kind of changes our understanding of the ancient world, and what you were saying with the rod of Hermes and Asclepius. Do you have like a particular favorite ancient mistake that has been carried through into modern culture?
I do, and it's quite. Oh yeah. And I think a lot of people, I don't know how many people actually recognize that it's a funny thing, but yeah, whenever I walk into like a drugstore, and then if I'm just like passing down, like if I see the Trojan condoms, like I just think that's hilarious, because I'm like, you know what the Trojan horse was, right? Like that's not a good thing. So why are we labeling our condoms Trojan? Like it bothers me. So but you know, I feel like my answer is going to change, because every day I feel like I learn something new, and I see a new reference that bothers me, and I'm like, okay, this is the one that's going to bother me even more than this thing. But I'd say that the Trojan one is the one I come back to most often, just because of the hilarity of the situation. Yeah, I don't know. Yeah. It'll change, I promise.
Different answers, different times is absolutely fine. So we have a couple of people saying that they are also gamers and they very much enjoy historical based games. Do you have a favorite, or is it just like a franchise that you really enjoy, or just all of them are amazing?
Oh, that's hard. So I would say 10-year-old, between like 10 and 15-year-old Lexie would have said the Civilization games.
Mm-hmm.
I played those all the time. That's where I grew up with. That's the technology I had. And also my parents didn't really let me have game systems, because they thought video games would mush my brain, and you know, they're all violent and terrible. But especially since like when I finally made it to university, I bought my own game system. So then I was like, aha, so you have no power over me and what I play. So then I was aware of the Assassin's Creed games the whole time, because everyone talked about them. Mm. And so I would kind of talk to people and just be like, just tell me the synopsis and then I can contribute. But then I got my own game system and I got all the games. And I would really say the Assassin's Creed franchise is my favorite, just because it's so historical in nature and it's so different. Mm-hmm. And in terms of like actual game, well, I'm pretty sure this won't be a surprise to anybody, but I could play Assassin's Creed Odyssey for hours and hours and hours. You know, even if I didn't have any of the other games, that base game, I've spent 400 some hours now exploring the game. So, and every time I play it, I feel like I'm discovering some new small detail. I was playing it just yesterday, and I was kind of walking around like a local home in Athens, and then I saw this beautiful sort of recreated pottery, and I just said, "Oh, wait! There's detail on this pottery." So then I like zoomed in the camera, and yeah, it's like beautifully painted and it's gorgeous. And I was like, oh my gosh, they even put in the smallest detail. Not all of it was correct, so that kind of bothered me, but I was still just like, kudos to having any kind of detail. So
I remember watching my brother play the Assassin's Creed, like one of the really early ones that's a Roman. I can't remember which one it is, but it's like set in Rome. And I didn't play myself until actually about a year ago. I got Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and they are so immersive and so well researched, and it's like they're fascinating. I love them, and just the characters are really like lively, and you feel like you're actually kind of wandering through Athens. I'm like, this is amazing, and I love it, and I want to play this all of the time and forever. I actually haven't played in a while because I have this weird thing where if I get too close to the end of a game, I'm like, no, I must stop, because if I finish the game, then it's finished. And I really don't like doing that. Very select games I'll do that with. Like I got Final Fantasy VII, the remake, and I played that all the way through to the end because I played the original to the end. So I know what happens, and that works. For some reason, I'm like, I'm not ready to finish Odyssey yet. I will one day.
I get that, but I'm also like, the benefit of Odyssey is, it's got 3 very distinct main storylines. So, you can finish like 2 major ones and then sort of leave
there's still the third one. Yeah.
Right. You can leave the third one and you can decide on like which order you do them. But also it's like, even when you finish the main storylines, unless you're a completionist and you do everything as you're going, you can go back and like do just like
that is stuff, true.
I love.
Yeah.
But I'm very picky as well about games ending. So with Valhalla, I did a very bad thing and I stayed up to like 4 a.m. every night and finished the entire main storyline in like, it was like 85 hours, and I did it in like 6 days. It was so unhealthy when it first dropped, but I loved it. But then I had that problem where I'm like, oh no, it's done. What do I do? Because I'm not ready for the experience to be over. And so they haven't had like New Game Plus. And so I'm like, until you get New Game Plus, I'm not going to finish it again.
Just leave it.
Take my time.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, very sensible. We do have a question actually from the audience that fits in here. Big Zebra says, do you enjoy the Age of Empires and Age of Mythology games?
So I have not played them personally, but I have watched them. And from what I have watched extensively on the internet, yes, I do like what I see. I would just say, I can't really play a lot of the like PC games just because I have Mac devices, so they're kind of hostile. And so what I can get through Steam. So I can luckily get like Civilization 5 and all the expansion packs on there. Some of them are just not compatible. So mostly I game on my PS4. And I'm limited to what kind of games, but just so I'm knowledgeable about a lot of ancient world games, even if I don't have the technology to play it myself, I will watch it on the internet or ask a friend or something. Yeah.
Very cool. So everyone, if you do have questions for Lexie, get them in the chat. We will ask them as we go. What so far has been your favorite thing about running a classical podcast?
Wow, that's a really tough one because there's so many amazing things that I just like never would have expected. Honestly, I would say probably the networking aspect, because this is me sitting at my computer emailing a bunch of well-regarded scholars, like tops in their field. They're not all just from exclusive universities, obviously. I do email from state schools and other small liberal arts colleges, but the ones who have responded so far tend to be from the Ivies, but hopefully it's getting better because I do have more responses coming in from other schools just to show that there's a broader range. And I would like to get the voices of professors who are not at these elite universities, because those are the departments that are safe, right? And I would like to talk to people whose departments are kind of like at risk. So we really, in the early going, it's like who answers and where I can fit people in scheduling wise. But it's been really wonderful because I've had such great conversations now with these scholars that, I really never would have had a cause to speak to. Some of them were interested in the same things. But I'll say that one of my favorites that I did about a month ago. Her specialty is like ancient medicine and ancient medical ethics. I'm not a medical person. I don't do medicine. I don't even like math. So why would I talk to her?
Yeah.
So in the normal context as a student, I would have really had nothing to say to her. But as a podcaster, it gives me this whole avenue to really dig into, who are these people? I want to show the world that these people are not just hoity-toity professors that are scary and unapproachable. I'm trying to be like, let's humanize them. Who are you? How did you get into classics? You're at Princeton now, but I'm going to guess you had a really hard time, getting to where you got to. How did you get tenure? These are questions that I think a lot of young aspiring scholars have, especially when they look at the job market now, and they're like, oh, I'll never get tenure at Princeton. Like, that's so hard. I'm like, well, I'm sure that this person didn't know how to do that either, but she did. So let's hear about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I think I agree completely. Like, for me, the best part about running this channel is the number of people. It's essentially given me an excuse to email and be like, hi, you don't know me, but I'd really like to talk to you, and I think you're really interesting. And it's like, it's not something as a grad student I'd have had the confidence to do, but having this kind of like mission of bringing, for me as seriology, but bringing it to a wider audience, I'm like, yes, this is important, this is valid, I deserve to email this person. And the response I've had has been overwhelmingly positive. I think maybe 2 people have said that they haven't, like, they don't have the time or the like bandwidth to talk to us. And that's over a period of 3 years, like just 2 people. Everyone else is like, and they've had obviously very valid reasons because people are insanely busy, but everyone else is just, yes, please, I will come on and I will answer your random questions and talk to the whole of YouTube, and it's absolutely fine. I feel very lucky.
Yeah. And, it's a lot of balancing, like, do I have a cause to do this? Yes, I think I do. And a lot of people would appreciate this, but also like the massive imposter syndrome that you get, because I was just like, no, why would they want to talk to me? I'm pretty boring. Like, like, you don't want to talk to me. I'm just not that interesting. It's okay.
And then they thank you for doing it. And I'm like, you're welcome.
Well, I've learned that, people really like to talk about themselves, especially academics. So if you say, I'm going to give you an hour to an hour and a half to talk about yourself and your research and everything you personally like, who's going to really want to say no?
Exactly. No, it's a wonderful thing. And True Tell is asking, what inspired you to start your podcast?
Oh, that's a lot of things. Well, I have to credit my very good friend, Dan, who's also my executive producer.
Yay, Dan.
Thank you, Dan. But it was really because, I was sitting here after the pandemic started thinking, oh, okay, well, I work from home. Now I have more time to just do things. So the first thing I did was I ordered like 20 books that had been on my book list because I'm like, well, I'll finally have time to read this. Still have only read. I was going to say, have you read them? I've read about 5 of them. Like, not even gonna lie, and they're like the smallest ones too. But yeah, I wanted so much just a place to be able to talk about my love for the ancient world and talk about my gaming experience, and so I started doing it with a group of friends, and Dan was in that group. And then at that time, I was telling him about how I really wanted to go to grad school, not for classics because I don't have the languages, and that's fine with me. But I decided I was going to sort of create my own path and meld my like ancient studies background with something more modern. So I've always been fascinated in politics, both ancient and modern, especially international relations. I was a model UN kid. I did that for all my time at uni. So I decided I was going to go study Greek nationalism and authoritarianism because I'm weird and I love learning that stuff on the side. So and then I just said, oh, well, this is good because if I study nationalism, I get to study the history of nationalism, and then I get to study the history of Greek nationalism, which goes all the way back to the classics. And so when I started to talk to him more about how I was going to do it, my potential MA topic, he just said, well, there's so much to contribute. I think you should start a podcast. So originally, the idea was, okay, I'm going to start a podcast to talk about ancient politics and let's talk about ancient nationalism to the modern. But then I said, I don't want to do that because that's so political. And, I feel like there's a wider avenue and people want to be entertained. And for people who don't want to get super political, I'm like, I don't want to just be another political show. And so then that's when I turned it into, okay, well, I can maybe broach certain topics about my eventual research, which is like the misappropriation of ancient cultures, which is one segment that I can definitely ask guests about. But then I said, no, I'm going to open it up and let's just talk about, classics as a whole. Let's talk about ancient studies as a whole, because they're all kind of dying. When I was sixth grade, so 10 years old, I had this fantastic teacher who we were going through our Egypt and Greece unit, and I actually wanted to be an Egyptologist. It was thanks to her. And when I knew that wasn't going to be a possibility, I settled into sort of being an armchair literary Egyptologist over here. And so in making the decision to open it up to all ancient studies, I said, oh, this is good. Now I can talk to Egyptologists again.
Perfect. That's fantastic. What do you think has been the most challenging part of getting this whole project up and running?
I think grappling with the idea that, like, knowing that ancient studies and classics, it's a very small sort of targeted audience. So just grappling with the fact that I'm an avid podcast listener, and one of my favorites is actually the JV Club with Janet Varney, who is the voice of Avatar Korra in The Legend of Korra, which was such a formative show for me. Just like the original Avatar, The Last Airbender was growing up. Those were my mythologies. Those are my things. But her podcast is huge, and just like any other celebrity, you're getting just a ton of viewership, a ton of fans, and so knowing that I was never going to be big and blow up like that, I was kind of like, oh man, this is kind of discouraging. And then I was like, no, that's a completely different thing. I mean, she's doing like life tips with whatever, you can talk about anything. I'm like, no, this is very academic, but it can be non-academic. So it was really struggling to make the decision. Okay, I would love to talk to actors, honestly. I'd like to talk to writers. I'd like to talk to game developers because I want to, integrate gaming in there. So it was kind of like, how do I make a tangibly good argument for putting them together? And how do I convince people in the entertainment industry that like they have a place? Because I was encountering a lot of skeptical people at first being like, are you sure? Like, this is really academic. I don't think it's a thing for non-academics. And so trying to like find a way to explain, no, it can be, just let me figure it out. That was definitely a challenge. But once I kind of talked it over, and then once I got this idea where I said, no, I'm going to make it a branding thing where the way I'm going to approach my ancient world is I'm going to force you to walk back there with me by talking about contemporary storytelling, which is literally what actors and writers do. And I'm like, I'm just going to look at your influences. Where do your stories come from? You can say your brain, sure, like they do, but everyone is going to be influenced by history, by the original storytellers. So I kind of latched on to the original storytelling sort of vein and said, that's where I'm going with it. And after that slight hitch, I've been doing pretty well, I think.
Who would be like your top person to get on the show?
Oh, that's a hard one. I mean, okay, realistically, it's never going to happen. I would love to have Gerard Butler because he was Leonidas. He's just been in such a huge thing. Like, it's a cultural thing now. Or I suppose I could say Brad Pitt. Brad Pitt went to my uni.
You've got it in. I mean, go for it.
He didn't graduate from there, and I was not there when he was there for certain. But he's been in such mythological content. But so more realistically, it's if I start small, it could grow. So right now, like in terms of most realistic sort of people, I really want Elias Toufexis to come on to my podcast. He is the voice actor who does pretty much like any kind of gravelly voiced Greek accent dude. He's in Blood of Zeus, and he's been in like all the Assassin's Creed games, and he's and he's Greek. So I'm like, why would I not want this person to come on? So yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. What has been like maybe the most surprising interview?
Oh, that's a hard one. That's a really hard one. Oh, this is hard. So I had a really great conversation with a guest about 3 weeks ago. Her episode is not due to drop until like July, so I don't really want to spoil who my quote unquote celebrity guest is.
Everyone tune back in July, and then you
Tune
can
back in
see for
July.
yourself.
Yes, I will say that this one scholar has a degree of privilege to be able to say things that others won't because she's secure in her position. But she's as close to you can get it. The way I describe her, honestly, without giving away, if you know who she is, great. It's like the Mary Beard of her field. It's not Mary Beard, but it's the Mary Beard of her field, sort of, or close to it. But she's very renowned, and it was kind of a coup that I was able to speak with her, and we had such a great conversation. But she did say a lot of interesting things that just shocked the hell out of me, because honestly, what I was kind of expecting was the standard answer that most scholars kind of tend to stick to when talking about funding and getting involved in the ancient studies, because I usually kind of lead the scholar to, okay, I want to attack this section. Let's hear what you have to say, because I'm trying to connect it. So if you hear all these scholars saying essentially the same thing, it'll resonate. But then she just took it and just went over here.
She just ran with it.
And I was like, whoa, what is this? It was crazy.
That's
so
amazing.
Yeah. But her episode will come out in July. So you will have to check that out. You can't miss her. When you see the name on the announcement, you will know exactly who I'm talking about.
And for those who have not been familiar with the podcast, I've put the website link in the description. The podcast is on all good podcasting arenas. I'll put your Twitter handles in there as well, so people can go and find you and pay attention.
Good.
Seriously, everyone, go and listen, because it's really cool stuff. I actually had a similar experience a couple of months ago. I was interviewing someone, again, very senior, and much more willing, and I think able to say things that everyone in the field knows are problems, but can't really be too critical because you've got tenure review coming up, or you're going on the job market next year, and it's kind of like, it's not great, but it's okay, and everyone's trying really. He was like, no, it's fucking stupid, I hate it. I'm like, okay then, good.
Yeah.
It was very cool.
It's always nice when you hear them just like pop out something random and you're like, whoa, what did they say?
Yes. We have a biblical Hebrew scholar who we've interviewed a couple of times, Joel Baden, and his whole Twitter account is very much all of that kind of thing. It's hilarious to watch because he gets very irate with people misusing the Hebrew Bible and like ancient history or the ancient historical context around the Hebrew Bible. He doesn't pull his punches. It's
see,
cool.
That's the thing. I never can like get the hang of Twitter. I'm so personally bad at it. I go to see what other people have to say. I try to sort of engage, but it's like it relies on constant engagement. And the thing is, the fundamental issue with Twitter for me, that's the place where people go to be all pithy and clever. And I'm like, I can't be pithy and clever in 240 characters or 220, whatever it is. I need a medium like Facebook where I can kind of not be encumbered by the character limit, or even Instagram. I can post a funny meme or something, and we do create our own custom memes for guests, which is kind of a fun thing.
Perfect. What's not to love?
Yeah.
Custom memes. That's awesome. No, I posted something on Twitter last night. And I got a response essentially saying, this isn't nuanced enough. You must be an idiot. I'm like, you realize, you do realize that I have a very limited number of characters in which to get my point across. So maybe nuance is not what Twitter is built for. Let's be
not the
honest.
Platform. No.
I understand. Nuance is very important, but I wasn't writing an academic paper, so I felt quite comfortable just saying my thing and then moving on.
Well, and then there's always I get sometimes, oh, well, I'll interact with you, but you're not really, like, you're not a PhD, so
You don't count. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, okay, thanks.
Thank you. It doesn't get any better because my husband has his PhD and doesn't work in academia, and he gets dismissed because they're like, you're not a real scholar because you're not working at Princeton. And he's like, okay, if you say so. You clearly know better than I do.
Yeah. So it's hard.
People are very special.
Mm-hmm.
What do you have coming up that you're excited about?
Oh, goodness. Well, okay. To not spoil too much on the podcast part, we have, I will just say, we've just on this past Wednesday, our episode 12 came out. We release bi-monthly just because I definitely would not have enough content to be a weekly I'd love to be a weekly podcast. I really would.
Weekly, I'd love to do weekly, but I'm like,
but content is so hard. I mean, you're juggling with professors and their schedules, and they're like, often I can't record until May when the semester's over, and I'm like, well, I would not have enough. So with our bi-monthly release schedule, I have about 25 episodes recorded, so we're good until
that's
like
amazing.
October.
Yeah,
so
that's
I'm like,
amazing.
we have enough content either. So I will say, we have a fantastic lineup of upcoming guests. There are some really great academics, because I love my conversations with all of them. They're so different. We've got some Egyptologists coming up as well as other classicists. But I would say, if you stay tuned, upcoming episodes, we've got game developers, game writers from Ubisoft coming. And I believe there may be one voice actor who's very popular from Odyssey coming.
Wow.
Soon.
That's awesome.
And then we've got another a voice actor from the Avatar: The Last Airbender series coming. So for people who love Avatar, we have someone amazing coming.
Oh, that's so cool.
So that's kind of on the podcast end. But I will say, quickly after the podcast part, we decided, my partners and I decided, we'd like to actually expand from just being a podcast into a small business, because we do want to do other things.
Mm-hmm.
So as of February, we are officially the Ozymandias Project LLC. So we're a business. Thank you. So we have a new website. Everyone should check it out. It's just the Ozymandiasproject.com. But the one part I can talk about a lot more than the guest that I don't want to spoil is that we are launching our very own Archeo Gaming lesson plan, apparatus.
Oh, that's amazing.
So that's more the business part. So we are really excited. Hopefully we're partnering with our friend Sasa, Save Ancient Studies. And we're going to be putting them hopefully into schools soon. But our plan for us as a business is that, I, with all of my experience, both playing Odyssey and some of the other games, we're hoping to make customized lesson plans and Archeo Gaming videos. So we would produce all the content. And then for anyone who would like to put it in their classroom, go in there and pay us a little money, please, because we are putting our time,
it takes a
our
lot
blood,
of
sweat, and tears,
stuff like this. Yeah,
but it's fun for us, so I think I spent the last 2 months developing 2 Archeo Gaming videos that we've now filmed, both the visuals and the audios we're putting together. One of them's already done. We're going to be putting that on our YouTube channel in not very long. It's like a week out, I think, from being launched. But it's a really exciting time. And then we'll be doing some Archeo Gaming streams. I have a friend in Greece. He's actually a tour guide and an archaeologist who loves talking about everything ancient Greece and architecture. So we'll be doing a joint stream. I have to figure out how to do it because he's in Greece, and Twitch does not have a shared joint audio thing. But essentially, we're going to do a full playthrough of Odyssey, and we're going to talk about the basically archaeological aspects of the game and the details they put in. So I know there's a billion streams using Origins that talk about Egyptology as you play the game. So I haven't really seen a dedicated effort to do that for Odyssey. And so I said, why not us? Like, let's just do it. I mean, if everyone right now is using Origins to teach, because I know that there's I think 3 professors in the UK right now who are using Origins to teach Egyptology. That's great and all, but I'm like, there's definitely an appetite for classics, but no one's done it. And I'm like, I'm gonna do it.
Fantastic. Damn it, I had a question in my brain and then it went away.
It'll come back.
It will come back. Probably at 4 a.m. tomorrow morning. Be like, damn it, that was like the best question of the entire show, and it just boop.
Oh no.
It just went away. So where can people find you if they are interested and want to know more?
Yeah, so the website, because all of my handles and contact info is on our website. But also, we're on Facebook at just the Ozymandias Project, and then we are also on Twitter and Instagram at pretty much the same thing, with maybe small variations for Twitter since they don't like to, use long names. I think we're like the Ozymandias P1 on Twitter. If you Google the Ozymandias Project, anything we're ever on pops up. So I think it pops up our LinkedIn page and other things. So we're very easily findable, and that's part of being accessible. We make it so that we're not hard to find, and we're always looking for feedback and people to interact with us and questions. And we're always saying, tell us how to improve, because we want to build out what we're doing and make it accessible and easy for other people. And in the future, we will also be doing, we're going to be launching a coaching and consulting service as well. So if you want to come to us because you say, hey, I'd like to get into podcasting, it can be about the ancient world. We hope it will be about the ancient world. But if it's not, we'll still offer our services and say, hey, we can help set you up. Because when we started the podcast, there was no training. No one taught us what to do. No one told us.
You just kind of jump in and hope that it works.
Right. You just go to the internet and you're like, okay, how do I do this? What do I need? There's no equipment suggestions except for some people on Quora, and you're like, oh, okay. So, I was like, all right, then. So part of our coaching and consulting service will be, we will walk you through the process of setting you up. And then we hope you'll join us kind of in a coalition of ancient studies or ancient studies adjacent podcasts, and we can grow and build out our influence, because at the end of the day, it's about reaching people. It's about making the ancient world open and accessible, because I'm such a strong believer in it has to be accessible, it has to be here, it has to be easy, because if we want more people to come in, we can't just paywall you or say you have to be affiliated with an institution. And that's one of my biggest pet peeves, which is, why is this not easy? Why can I not get to this? So,
yep, 100% agree with that. I remembered my amazing question, which is not necessarily amazing, but I think needs to be asked. Do you have a Patreon or anywhere that people can financially support you?
Yes. So we are on Patreon at the Ozymandias Project. We also have a coffee. So for people who can't subscribe every month, we do, the one-time donation, which is really nice. I think on coffee, we're also at the Ozymandias Project. I think we're so just unimaginative.
It's branded, it's easy to find. There is absolutely nothing wrong with it.
Yeah, so we're reaching out and branding and stuff. So I think with our Archeo Gaming, we're actually going to start branding all our materials under our. If you've listened to any of the podcasts for our intro and outro, it's an idea that I came up with when I was scripting everything. When I wanted a fun little intro and saying, how do I make it seem like we're kind of time traveling backwards? I came up with the idea of trireme transit, because they did not have planes, trains, and automobiles. What did they have? They had triremes. And I like triremes more than I like biremes. So it just kind of
perfect.
The alliteration, it rhymed. So I think we're going to start branding certain things under trireme transit. So you may see a new little logo popping up somewhere, but it'll all be branded under us as the umbrella business. And we've got just so much exciting things. And I would say, if you like what we're doing, we would so appreciate the support, because it's not easy, especially since people already don't take you seriously. And as I said, funding is already an issue for all of academia, but especially for people who are trying to increase the exposure. It's hard. But we have a good start. We actually just won a Classics Everywhere grant from
Congratulations.
Classical Studies. So thank you. So it was really exciting.
That's fantastic.
Those are wonderful little micro grants, and we're so grateful that they kind of trusted us to do the good word of spreading the word around. So
wonderful. Well, I have one final question that is from the chat. Yeah, and it's a very, very serious question.
Okay.
True tell. Can you ask Lexie to tell an ancient fart joke before you wrap up, please?
Oh no! Oh gosh! Oh. Okay, so here's the thing. I do not really know. I'm not the expert with ancient fart jokes. I'm so sorry. That was actually one of the topics on my very first episode, and it was a grad school friend of mine who his whole thing is he's obsessed with fawns and ancient fart jokes. So
we'll just direct people to that episode, then they can go and listen to all of the fart jokes they want.
So episode 1 with my good friend Jordi Alonso. He's a current PhD student at the University of Missouri. And I think he will be going back and doing an MA in classics next year. So you can follow his stuff. He does really fun things if you like fawns and fart jokes. So unfortunately, I'm not the person to ask there. I'm so sorry. I need to get better, but I'm good for a lot of different things. So
to be fair, I don't have any fart jokes just randomly on hand either. So
okay, so I'm not alone.
Think that's no.
I'm honestly, I joke that I'm honestly the like in the moment punny type of person. You know, I was traveling in Israel. We were kind of going up to the Golan Heights, and it was there's this really beautiful mountain pass, and there's just like these giant boulders that had fallen down at one point that were on each side of us. And so I saw this, and then I took the opportunity for the other like 20 people on the bus to say, "Hey guys, would you say we're on a rocky road?" And then they just die because they're like, you're just full of such bad dad jokes. And so I would say the greatest like joke placement of my life though was that same Israel trip. We were out in the desert riding camels, and we were just kind of like all tired, and it's the end of the day. And then I rip out my bad dad jokes, and I'm just like, "Yo, anyone have a straw?" I don't think they I think that joke went over their head because someone was like, "Are you out of water? Like, where's your," like literally the response was like, "Don't you have a camelback on?" And I was like, "That's not the point." I was like, "I'm sitting on a camel and I'm asking you for a straw. What do you think I'm trying to do?" And they're like, oh, the straw broke the camel's back. Got it. And I'm like, well, it took you like 10 minutes to get to it. So that was the best joke of my life, and it went sadly over everyone's head.
That's unfortunate. I'm a fan of a good dad joke, though.
Like, I'm full of those.
Classic humor.
Firmly.
They're beautiful. Anyway, we will wrap up now because we're approaching the hour mark, and I, frankly, am very pregnant and need to go and take a nap. So thank you all for joining us. Lexie, thank you so much for coming. It was wonderful to talk to you. And good luck with everything. It sounds like you've got some really fantastic projects kind of underway and in development, and definitely people watch this space.
Yes, please do. Stay tuned. We've got great things coming.
And more links will be in the description box below. So if you are interested in what Lexie is doing, then you can go and find all of her stuff and listen to all of the podcasts, and it will all be wonderful. And until next time, everybody, resist poor scholarship. Always ask, how do you know that? Digital Hammurabi is made possible by generous sponsorship from our patrons. Their support means that we have the technological and academic resources necessary to bring the ancient world directly to you. If you want to join the team, go to patreon.com/digitalhammurabi to see how you can help.